then we have a nice discussion period at the end as well. The way that I like to put together presentations is to lead the walking audit and then have time to assemble the ideas. It was very tight today, but that's all right. I had predicted what the big issues might be based on first uh, chatting with Mike, reading the study, and seeing your town through Google Earth. So, but I had to make some quick changes, and so please ignore, well, that's not in the right context. That should have been there, right? Anyway, um, I've been doing this for my entire career, and I was very fortunate to be one of the top early innovators. So I've been the great fortune of been awarded quite a number of awards, but I'm up to 3,800 communities now, and I try to learn from each community, and then add that to the toolkit. So you're going to see a lot of images from all over the country. Let's see if we can switch to this one. And I want to, again, thank Josh CivicWell for their engagement. Una is an amazing talent who I've never seen anyone organize anything as well. And then, of course, Mike Wilson, who joined us today. Is Mike here right now? Yeah, to leave. Okay. That he coordinated with Josh to figure out how we could make all this happen. Right. And first thing I'd like to do is compliment you on the way that you're handling your trail driveway links. I'd say easily half, if not even more, of the trails I've been able to ride in America, they put up stupid stop signs for the prominent rider, walker, and that's just totally against all regulations and common sense, right? You want the trail for a low volume driveway to have the right of way, the assigned right of way. So compliments, I've never seen it done quite as well as here. So this is good. I really love it. And of course, did each of you get to come? Are there some who are here for the first time for today? You were able to be on the walk? Yeah, that's what I meant, I guess, without saying it very clearly. But quite a great turnout for a very small town. I mean, just amazing. So I want to start with what we're now trying to recover from, which is having way overbuilt for the car, sacrificed our people and place. This is basically what the engineers were tasked to do, and that is move cars efficiently. Try to do it safely, but sadly, some of the guidelines they were given were just totally backwards. Like wider streets do not make a safer road. Might be that case in a freeway, but it's certainly not for a community or local streets or anything. So over time, what people started to figure out is we should focus on moving people. Cars, populated by people, still move, and they move well. But now we move transit, walking, biking, and we also make sure that we're being more equitable, that we're providing for all people to move and not just those who happen to own cars or something like that. And an understanding that people will not choose walking, biking, or transit if it's not comfortable. It's a bit more challenging than with a car because a car's got the built-in creature comforts, right? And so we refer to this as the lateral approach as opposed to the conventional approach. And the goal is more people, fewer miles, right? And by doing this, we are able to reduce the growth of automobile traffic and its dominance. So that's the idea. The other thing I want to look at up front is that engineers were taught to provide a forgiving design. It sounds good in principle, but by making uh, lanes wider, intersections bigger, clear zone, cut down all the trees, et cetera, we actually worsened conditions overall. So what we're now being taught, and this is a radical change, is that we should be providing for safety and lower speeds anywhere in an urban area. And that involves narrowing lanes, providing, this is interesting, put the curves back in the road. And the very things that we did to produce crashes end up producing higher speeds and therefore more horrific crashes when they occurred. And so all of this is what, Mike, I think you and the community and your organization are striving to do. There are terms we use for this. One is referred to as completing our streets. And there are so many benefits, not just safety and having multimodal transportation and transportation that works for all people. It involves our ability to have livable streets. And what this really relates back to, Donald Appleyard, a Californian, did a major study and figured out if the volumes of traffic and the speed of traffic was low, people ended up having more friends on the very block they lived on. And they had more acquaintances. And then if you look down to the bottom, after high volume and high speed, people ended up with only 0.09 friends. I mean, you know, do the math, 0.09 versus 3 friends. The social life of our street is very important. And the more we reduce that, the more society breaks down, right? So this is core. What a complete street is, it's not a particular design. It's a policy that every time you touch a street, including even resurfacing the street, you're going to correct for some of the sins or omissions of the past. And so I like to use this image because on the left is an industrial set of land uses. And there they also had to put in the utility poles, kind of like what you had to do on one side. And so they had an attached sidewalk, kind of like what you have. And because they could get the bike lane in, it helps save the sidewalk. The pedestrian's not crunched right up against moving traffic. Your setting is that you have on-street parking. And that's it. That's as good for creating that buffer or that comfort, right? Now look at the other side of the road. We have apartments, houses, and so we are able to set back the sidewalk, have a beautiful green area, inset the parking, and have bike lanes on both sides. These are also 10-foot lanes. What we say should be your default, that you start every street with 10-foot lanes. Then if you have a exceptional need, like high traffic volumes, high transit use, or something like that, curves, then go up to 11. But start with 10 as a default. It's a safer street, and it's one that uses up less paving and creates fewer drainage problems and everything. So I'm going to show you some of my favorite streets near where I live. I live in Port Townsend, Washington. This is the next community over. And notice all the things they've done. They've done many things. They tried to set the sidewalks back, and they did, except for this one near approach. The bike lanes, again, save the sidewalk. It's a buffer. And then notice the median. It's green. Now they have a lot more right-of-way than you do on your entry street. But this, in principle, is what you're striving to do with your street. This is another one that I love. Again, they use narrow travel lanes. They inset the parking, and there are steps that you're taking to inset the parking. You could do more, and I think in your next iteration you are doing more, but you don't have enough space to put in a raised median or the trees. You just don't have that real estate to work with. So let's start with the principles. If you want more people to walk, more people to bicycle, then you need to design the streets you see in the left two panels as opposed to the right two panels. And, and any human being can tell you when they're comfortable or not comfortable, right? As you walk, you make that determination. It's not only true of pedestrians, it's equally true for bicyclists. So 60% of all Americans say they would walk or they would bike if we could achieve that level of traffic stress, 1 or 2. They don't want to be in a category 3 or 4. There's another thing I like to equate with whether people will walk or not. What's missing here? If you wanted to let your child go to the park, what would you want here? Crosswalk? Sidewalk. Let's put them in. Now notice there still aren't people here. What else would you want? As an adult, you make the decisions, you allocate the funds. Oh, good, I'm so glad you said that. Because that was the next slide. But you still don't see any people here. And there's a big reason why. What's missing? No. You want to be watched over. You want your code to require for your public realm, your public spaces, that you have houses or other use buildings that are going to provide that security, right? And does this all make sense? That if we want people to walk, they have to not only feel comfortable and safe, they really want that security. They do. I've gotten to work on a number of beautiful projects I'm very proud of. This is Olympia, Washington, at the very end of Puget Sound. And it's a beautiful place to enjoy living in Olympia. And but this is the way the bridge used to be. The motorist is trying to stay as far away from the sidewalk as they can, but it really was a low performance bridge when it came to be multimodal. But look at the right, that's what we rebuilt. Now you've got bike lanes, got a really nice buffer, and even inset so that you can stop and look out over the water and things like that. So this starts to capture all the things people would want if they were to walk or bicycle. I'm going to quickly show you some of the tools. Many of these just don't apply in your community because you don't have enough width, but where you have the width, these are really great tools. We have buffered bike lanes, two conditions here. Then we have protected bike lanes by having been able to move the parked cars further out. And then we have a fully separate trail. You got the fully separate trail, and that's pretty darn cool. Now, on getting bicyclists and pedestrians across the street, you're already using some of these tools, but having the median island is probably thing number one if you can achieve it. If you can separate the conflicts by direction, have a pause point for a bicyclist or a pedestrian. These are the kind of things you should strive for in your updated designs. I'm going to do this one more quickly. It does apply to your community, but I think you've pretty well done it. I have not gotten a chance to get down to the river, but I suspect your streets do align with the river, the sight lines?
No, the one we didn't go, right where at that intersection where we turned back around, that led to the river.
Okay,
Hatchery Road, so we were gonna walk that way, but we just ran out of.
ran out of time because I talked so much.
Okay, it's all good.
Well, at least we can cover the principle. Which U.S. president laid out this town? Yes. George Washington was a surveyor. Although we're told he only made it to eighth grade in school, he used common sense. Said, why would you not want your streets to align with the water? The great treat in our community. So they did. But then people end up doing the wrong thing. So if your code allows privatization of the waterfront, then you have devalued every home you see in yellow. If you do the other opposite, you put your walking condition, trail next to the water, and then you let the streets have an open view with the water, you have added value to every single home. Does that make sense? I want to introduce target speeds. It's the speed we would like the motors to go on a particular street. So let's just say in your community, you have areas where you don't want motors to go more than 20. You, fortunately, are working toward even better, 15 miles per hour. But then there are places where it's okay if they do go 25 or even 30. But you eventually reach an area where it's okay to pick up speed even more. So that's all one road, right? So let's start with Chico, California. How fast do you think motors would go on this street based on what you see? Yeah, almost everybody says that. It's got to be true. And we went in and we worked on this road. These are photomorphs. We didn't bring the change. Now how fast? Now how fast? Now how fast? And now how fast? Yeah. Yeah. Now, at this stage, the engineer has done all they can do. So we turned over to the developer. And based on their desire for high profitability, they would prefer, in this case, to build to a town farm, but they couldn't have done that had we not transformed the road. So it's a partnership, right? I'll quickly go through sidewalks. You've got the principles down, keeping in mind that people need a certain amount of physical space to feel comfortable. Indeed, all human beings wobble some, right? And so even though people might only be 2.5 feet wide, it doesn't work. Nor does 4 feet work. To have a sociable sidewalk, we need at least 5. Ideally, though, 6 in your commercial districts. The same is true with crosswalks. My personal recommendation is 12 feet to wide. And if you have less, the intersection is less noticeable to the motors. And that's what you want. But you also want the possibility of different groups of people crossing at the same time. Now let's talk about more on creating that buffer zone. Notice that when the pedestrians have no buffer to the street, it's a very uncomfortable situation. It also can be much noisier because the speeds are higher. But if you have that buffer zone, it could be the bike lane, it could be parking, it could be a landscape style added to the sidewalk. So all these work. On local streets, there are many things that will kill a sidewalk. One, not wide enough, 4 feet. And another would be rollover curbs so that motors end up parking on the sidewalk because they are worried someone's going to take out their mirror, right? And then having driveways be too short so that you see the motors in the near ground and the foreground both blocking the sidewalk. So if you were to come up with a code, a town code that fully supports walking, minimum width of 5 feet. Then if you allow fencing, and I noted in your community you do, the fence should be set back 1 foot. It could be more, but I think 1 foot works effectively. And then ideally, you also allow space for what we call the furniture zone and or planter zone and so on. So you can end up with an area that has even more walking. And notice what we've done. This building sits almost at the street. So we've widened the sidewalk, and now we have what we call a shy zone. It's a buffer, but again, nobody's going to walk that close to a fence or other obstruction, planting materials or whatever. And then if you have a drop-off, you definitely need a rail for anyone to feel comfortable. And so this is a good example of one done well. If you get into the commercial district, you want your sidewalks to be wider. And notice how nice and neat the planter row is. The other thing I like to point out is getting in good ground cover right on the corner. This really helps the motorist know how far out they should be to make their turn, and it really can help. So whatever plant material you can get on a corner matters, right? Quickly on trails, I want to point out that it's one of the healthiest things we've learned to do in communities in recent decades. I mean, it really is. And it's amazing. Sometimes when we built our first trails, we thought they were for pure recreation. Turns out that on almost any trail, about 30% of the use is for commuting. Might be kids getting to school, might be someone just wanting to go on a trip downtown, whatever. So we are very impressed, very amazed with how well trails modify a community, make it so much more sociable, civil, and so on. I'm going to put this one plug in for health. This is very well proven that 20% of our health is dictated by our genes. We can't control that. And but the other 80%, great news, is we're in charge of. And the more active we are, the better food we eat, all the things under our control will make us healthier and add to the years of our lives. So here are some of the reasons why I'm in love with trails. And by the way, I happen to love this trail in particular. It's Jackson Hole, Wyoming. But look what they've done with the housing. Next to the trail, they've got beautiful homes that add to the feeling of security. Now, you've done that with your trail as we ride. You've got wonderful eyes on the trail, and it really works. The other thing that is important for trails is to create these nodes where people come together. You know, it might be other trails come in, whatever, but it also becomes a real center for any community and adds to the success of that community. And then I love this, as more and more people bike, you end up with people belonging to a group. It could be a bicycling group, it could be a soccer group, or a group that wants to do more than just play soccer. But the point is that adds to health and happiness as well. And so think of all the multiple benefits that your trails provide to your community. Makes them worthwhile. And I think a very important thing, and as the Redwood Trail gets completed, you guys are going to be a very important place, right? And but think of all the things it does and all the ways that you can plan ahead for the completion of that trail, and just how spectacular your community will be. But you'll be also green, close to nature. I think everyone here probably is familiar with the term forest bathing. Is that a term?
Yeah, there was an article in the Times Standard on Sunday about it.
Yeah.
And I had never heard it. I thought people were showering in the forest. But it is like a sort of Tai Chi
Yeah.
or something that they're doing in the forest.
It's very calming. It truly adds to your health. And some people are already doing research that says it also adds to how long you live. The more you force bathe, uh, I mean, you think about it. Where did humanity spring out of? The woods. So why not make that accessible? I also want to talk a little bit about some principles so that as you do the design, you understand what we're trying to achieve. I like for any crosswalk, again, to be 12 foot wide. And if you can, make your ADA ramps that wide as well. It just looks good. It reads well. So we try to get in 2 ramps per corner and have them as wide as the crosswalk itself. This is a wonderful treatment at a school zone. You're, I'd say, halfway there. When we were out there, I configured in my own head, you take out the parking, you do curb extensions, but if you have enough space to get a median in, that's going to give huge benefit to your calming your traffic. You might think of it as a pinch point or a narrowing, but it's incredibly effective. I think you're already doing this. Your crosswalks are the international markings. These, by the way, are 10 times more visible than if you just have 2 parallel lines, which until very recently, almost everyone had nothing more than the parallel lines. Some other tools, and I'm going to introduce it here, but I'm going to get into the detail a little bit later. This intersection is totally uninviting for walking, correct? But what if you did something like this? Now, this is domed, and it can be seen quite far out, especially for truck drivers looking down. They see this further out than a regular motorist does. But notice, too, the importance of the edges, of the decorative trees. I mean, just compare the top with the bottom, and then add the art. And you've got so many canvases around town that are just waiting for the art. When you can, also put in a median nose. That really makes the motorist honest about their turn, because they don't want to hit it. So that offers a huge level of further calming and more protection for the pedestrian. I want to talk about roundabouts, but I want to set the stage for that. So if you can't do a roundabout, this would be an ideal makeup of a street. You keep the conflict areas tight, good tight radii, and then the median nose, which we've just talked about. And again, no more width in the street than you need. Further introduction to the roundabout, if you just have a standard intersection, the engineering community has put together this graph you see on the right. This is how much kinetic energy occurs. And you want low connectivity, kinetic energy, right? Not high. A roundabout has this much kinetic energy. You can hardly see it. And then we look at how many conflicts we get. For a standard intersection, we got 32 vehicle-to-vehicle conflicts. We got 24 pedestrian-to-vehicle conflicts. That's 6 per leg. And if we have them at an ordinary speed, that has very high kinetic energy and therefore lethal results. But look at the roundabout. It's only got 1 conflict at a time, at a low speed, and a soft angle. For that reason, you will reduce fatals at an intersection when you use a roundabout by 90%. Personal injury crashes, 70%. All crashes, 50%. And the crashes that do occur usually is just moderate or minor body damage. Nothing injured inside of the vehicle. I also like to say the roundabout is far more efficient. So if you only have a two-lane road and you're approaching higher traffic volumes on your street, you have to add a right turn lane. You have to add a left turn lane. So you can see how just an ordinary two-lane road gets widened until it's no longer a fun trek for someone walking across. And it's going to produce higher crashes. But look at the roundabout, and I chose this number of 30,000. That's a lot of vehicles. That if you have a roundabout, it can handle up to 30,000. Just depends on your loading factor. But look, overall, it eats up less space than the road, and it's much quieter. About 73% reduction in noise when you use a string of roundabouts. Huge difference in livability, living in the neighborhood. So note the street on the left. That's Hamburg, New York. That's where I'm going to be in 2 weeks. We've already built 4 roundabouts there, and we're looking at building 2 more. It's a truck route. It's a major truck route, and many, many, many more trucks than you have. But look what we were able to do. We put the parking in, but then we didn't have enough space for a buffer lane or a bike lane, so we put in what we were just calling a park assist lane. That allowed us, and then we colorize it, that allowed us to bring the truck or just travel lane down to 9 feet. We're still meeting federal and state guidelines because the space available to all vehicles is still the space between the parked car and but what we ever do is bring the speeds down. Something like that could further reduce your speeds or bring them closer to the 15 miles an hour you seek. And all it is paint, right? We also put in roundabouts. All 3 images are of Hamburg, New York. We came to one intersection that most of the motors are making left-hand turns going one direction or right-hand turns the other. But look how big the truck apron is. Just a tiny raised island, but the truck apron is needed to be that big because we had a very constrained space. The street on the left in Asheville was a very high fatality corridor. We had the parking lots on the right-hand side and the courthouse on the left-hand side. And we wanted to make it 1 lane in each direction. The numbers, we looked at the traffic numbers, and by crunching them, he said, okay, we can do a road diet all for but one reason. When you got down to this intersection, we still needed all those lanes just to store the cars, right? So we said, we need a roundabout at this intersection to make the road diet work. You can see it. This is shortly after it was built. And this is a few years later after the trees came into bloom. Yeah. So here's the problem. People can't safely get across the street. Use the roundabout, handle the traffic volumes, and now people can get across the street. We talked about mini roundabouts, that at the top end of your street, you can't fit a standard roundabout. It just would take up too much real estate. If you did a mini, trucks can roll over it. They don't want to, but when they make a turn, they need to. So on a through movement, they go around it appropriately because they don't want that slight lift. And but turning, say doing a left turn, they have to roll over it. And in this case, the entire island's available for them to roll over. So this is one of the newest tools in the toolkit. I worked in this town. We put the entire downtown on a road diet, lost all but 2 lanes. And I knew that we needed a roundabout at this intersection. So we end up hiring an engineering team and this is really early on, this is one of the first mountable roundabouts in the country. It's in Manitou Springs. Right? Now let's get into the big topic, traffic calming. And I like to introduce traffic calming with some of the ideas that you featured, and I don't know the names of your streets, but when we stopped where I was recommending the treatment in the street, but there was a side street coming in. What was that street? G. Yes, that's right. If you were to close it, you still want pedestrians and bicycles to go through. So here's a really nice treatment to really transform that street, if that's the direction you go, but still allow people walking and bicycling. E, is it E?
Yeah, it's E.
Okay, good.
Next to Sherman's house?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's E Street.
So what I want to share about traffic calming is you get some of the biggest bang for the buck with the dollars you spend. It should be for everyone, every mode of travel, including freight. And you really should strive to keep it low cost because you got a lot of areas that need that help, that added love. You definitely want to engage the public, do a charrette or workshop style treatment so that people become informed and they pick the tools. You won't show them a tool that wouldn't work, but they pick them because they're the ones who are going to live with it every day, right? And make sure it's a whole system, that you're not just moving your problem to somewhere else. And then measure your success. These are some of the tools I highly recommend. Notice the neighborhood mini circle, which you already got a pop-up demonstration of. Congratulations on that. And notice also we've got, I want to advance so that we get the names. We've got on-street parking, and again, that can help slow traffic if you do it correct. We've also got the green, the trees. And then further down, you can see we're blocking the vision with a roundabout. So all these things keep the speed on this one block area under control. Again, when you can, your bulb outs should really be green. Not just a tree, but ground cover. It's easier for the motors to detect, and it really has a much greater impact on bringing the speeds down. We also, and I think it was that intersection, E, did you say?
Yeah.
That Josh pointed this out. You want motors to have a much clearer sight line. And one of the beautiful things about bulbs is you keep open the window, the view, but you use ground cover and you use tree canopy to further authenticate. And it also helps you calm the traffic on the principal road. So on a curve, notice the one little green area to the right. I think that's critical in your situation. But notice we've allowed for the driveways to work with this drawing. This one got built almost exactly the way you see it. When you can, get someone to adopt a mini circle. Let it be a source of pride. It could be a garden club. It could be at one home resident or owner, right? That's pretty cool. Here you again see the dome and how well that fits in a very tight intersection. Bicycles go right over it. It's not an impediment, but no truck or car wants to go over it at speed. It's not comfortable, right? Again, when I was talking about medians, I love high visibility medians. Getting the green in And this is just on a neighborhood street, but look how attractive this is, how comforting it is. You could, on a curve, if you had to, narrow the streets to where you know you can still get all vehicles through. But look what they did here. They widened the gutter pan. So the paved portion or the asphalt portion only feels like it's 9 feet. But the big vehicle can still handle it because the gutter pan is wide enough to handle it. So think about the value of wider gutter pans to get that message across. We also tossed out the idea of a raised table crossing. You've got most of the elements already. Now, whether you went to a table or not, you might want to explore, but if you did one, this is the right way to do it. You have a curb extension, open up the sight lines, protect the sight lines, and then have the median, so a person only has one possible conflict at a time. Does this all make sense? Okay. And again, I apologize, not everything is in the order I'd like because I just ran a little short of time. So further adopting the mini circle. Neighbors love to pick the type of plants that, maybe it's a fragrance garden, I don't know. In my own town of Port Townsend, one of the neighbors I inspired built this mini circle for less than $100. The city approved it, and in Crested Butte, Colorado, look what they did. They use planter boxes. And again, a physical narrowing of the street, but something that's in character with Crested Butte, kind of a rural feeling to these boxes. By the way, they get 9 cumulative feet of snow every winter. So these go into a warehouse during the winter. And then the snow does the traffic calming, right? So one thing that I really recommend is that you look at the entry to your town for really authentic gateways. And there's so many ways to do that. I'll just show a few. One of my favorites is if you got the width to do it, no parking, instead allocate that space as a median. This one I dearly love. It's on a state highway, entering a little town called Watercolors. And the area before the median, I think you can see it's scored out, it's concrete, it's a ripple effect. No motors would want to go over it. And it really gives them strong knowledge and information about there's a median ahead, right? They did something else I really like. There's no curbing, but what they did is they super reinforced the shoulder so that if a motorist went out of control, they're on a very firm surface. This is actually one of the best gateways I've ever seen. I think elements of this would apply. The median can start narrow and then get wider and then have a tree and other plant materials. I didn't pull in all the images I wanted, but I want to get the concept across. When you have double yellow lines, the motorist feels they have to stay on their side of the line, even though they're going to really grind a bicyclist into the asphalt. If that double yellow line weren't there, the motorist would be more courteous. So where you don't need a double yellow line, and we walk down the street where you really didn't need it, then motorists are going to be far more courteous to bicyclists. Oh, this is a little string I love. We already did this here, correct? This is the second time. Da, da. So you know the answer. Chicanes. I think you have some opportunities for chicanes. Notice you've got curb extensions, and that forces the motorist out toward the center. And then the median forces them back. That deflection path that the motorist is required to take guarantees the speed will be whatever the engineers select. So if it's 12 miles an hour, great, you got it. Just use the right deflection speed. All of these are deflection path that you see here. Here you see it up close. And someone pointed out, well, Dan, look at all the curbing that got struck by a car. And what do you think about that? I said, that's a wonderful teaching point, right? And it is. If you want to destroy your, front tire or whatever, go ahead. But try to remember the lesson you learned today, right? And again, you can see it here. They use a deflection path to force a motorist out, and then a median to force them back in. Here you see it again from another angle, actually. I mentioned this particular shirt. This is not Santa Barbara, by the way. That's Golden, Colorado. The median island and the bulb out with the wide gutter pants, right? And so to the motorists, they see 8 feet of asphalt. That's what their mind says. And so the brain says, slow down. And here you see it up close, right? Again, the paved portion is only 8 feet, but the gutter pan would allow a vehicle clear up to 13 feet of curb-to-curb surface. Here you can see it diagrammed. This one in Honolulu. Then I don't know if you have any streets that are currently skewed or have a high-speed entry, other than I think actually that's what you're treating. Yeah.
Just coming on off of, you said we saw right off
Yeah.
Lake Boulevard, and then Wenatchee kind of comes down here.
Right.
Or you could go into town, because right now, that's why you put the paint, but
Yes.
if you're on Hatchery, they can head towards the water and, straight, so we want to slow them down instead of flying into them.
Cool. So here we did the curb bulb and kept it detached so that the drainage was uninterrupted. And boy, did this ever bring down the speeds. In fact, I was presenting this in Honolulu to the city staff, congratulating them on what they had done. And a woman walks by, peeks in and sees this, and she shouted out, I hate that. And I said, well, why do you hate it? She said, I used to be able to turn that corner at 30 miles an hour. And everybody applauded their own work, right? Because they had seen the problem, they corrected it, and here was testimony that it was working. So, at any rate. A bulb out at or a set of bulb outs at an intersection. Here you see again the bulb outs used in combination with a mini circle. With a big bus going through, we always use the truck turning template so we get it right for every size vehicle. Isn't that cool? The Europeans are ahead of us. This is nicely done, very low cost, and again, inset parking because of the bulb outs. And here you see we also call this a curb radius reduction. So if you have a wide sweeping radius, then this shows how to account for that and make it much, much, much safer. Some other low-cost tools, very effective. This is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Whenever you can get any level of treatment in for the pedestrian in a crossing, I highly recommend it. And this one's fairly low cost. They use granite and probably sand and then infill it with brick. Nice color, right? Here you can see where they couldn't get a raised median in front because of the occasional very large vehicle they had to turn. Then what they did is they used concrete and then made it to where it's going to rumble. when the rare vehicle has to have that, right? Again, you can see the short median. The school crossing we looked at where I noted there was a car parked way too close. It was actually blocking the view of a child. This is my recommendation on the approach side. Angle it back. You can still keep the open curbing if that's the need or the desire. And all of these are very well proven now. We've probably got over 500 in Honolulu alone. Again, Golden, you can see, this is really a low-cost treatment. The city engineer told me he got the whole treatment, the whole crossing in. Well, this is a few years ago, but he could get the whole treatment in for under $20,000. And in engineering dollars, that's nothing. Carmel likes that really rural, authentic kick. I like it. They just use materials that says, we're rural. This is our authentic look. Real quickly, parking. Is this Willow Creek? It's been so many years.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to go back when I leave town tomorrow. I'm going to go this route. I want to see how big those trees are now.
They're big, a lot bigger.
Oh my gosh.
They did the one lane, I mean, that's used to be 4 lane, and you guys, that's when you and Sweeney talked about that, and they finally implemented it. So it's just 1 lane each way,
There's a median, isn't there now in the
and
middle?
then trees and all.
Oh my gosh.
Beautiful, it's really pretty.
Well,
Yeah.
congrats on you guys. I also want to share with you something we talked about last night, and that is for your angled parking, consider back-end angle. And I know you're doing the new development where I just think this is going to be the safest way to park. Motors can figure it out in a heartbeat. They'll complain. But if it's a brand new development, who cares? This is the parking you gave them. And if it works there, any other place you need angled parking, all the better. And here's one reason I really like. First of all, it is the safest way you can park a car. When you go to pull out, you got total commanding view. It's safer for bicyclists. It is safer for your children. The trunk is where it really should be, not out in the middle of the street. And this travel lane next to the back-end angle parking is only 8 feet wide. So your lanes can be narrower. Your parking is so much safer. And just do it. You can also, in some areas where you need the parking, switch from your angle on one side over to the other side. You can actually do it with parallel parking as well, but this actually worked quite well. Now, this is my closing. The neighborhood you see here, Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan DOT realized that all these homes didn't have a sidewalk. There was one on the other side of the street, but imagine trying to get across that street. And so Michigan DOT put on a workshop, went in to help convince people that they would pay for a sidewalk for everyone. 300 people came out to kill the sidewalk. And the reason was, to them, sidewalks were urban and they were rural. We're a very conflicted society, and we have to figure out what are our values. Is it the safety of our children? Is it being active? Is it responding to the needs of our elders to go out and take walks every day? Well, then you are rural, but a sidewalk is part of what you're asking for with your values. So, at any rate, I always love it when we can do workshops or projects where the public really gets it. We call that informed consent. And I know if we had been given permission to go in and work for the Michigan DOT on this project, they would have sidewalks and they'd be very, very happy. Maybe more trees. You know, that looks rural. Okay, I'm going to skip this because you're not that complex. But I will say, the result of a trip I made to Barcelona. My mentor told me this is the most walkable city in the world. I totally believe him. I spent 2 weeks there and got back, and looked at this photo, and I couldn't figure out what it was. So I asked my mentor, Ramon, I said, what's going on here? He was from Barcelona. He said, Dan, you discovered the secret of Barcelona. The architects, landscape architects, engineers, planners, take children out on walks to teach them what constitutes a great city. So that when they grow up and they become the architects, engineers, whatever, or the elected leaders, they're gonna make the right decisions. So later I got to Bend, Oregon, and Bend, I saw this whole school, grade school of students walking in there carrying clipboards. So after they stopped and started drawing again, I asked the teacher, what are the children drawing? And she says, Dan, they're drawing the city they want. Think about that. And finally, my favorite closing sign. Bill Murray, I think, is nailing it. What we need is to take bold measures to correct the mistakes of the past and to build the future that we want. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Got time for questions and answers? Oh, sorry, Mandy.
Have you ever used art crosswalks?
Oh, yes.
Talked about, and I know there's been some concern about pushback from like Caltrans or whatever, but being a community that has like a lot of artists and things, like bringing some vibrancy to crossings, is that something you recommend or?
I do. I just read an article on it today, people chastising the Manual and Uniform Traffic Control Devices Committee for narrow-minded. They've now been very well proven to increase safety and quite a bit. Bloomberg Associates, the former mayor of New York, is funding a lot of the studies and everything. But he made very strong, very bold announcement that we've got to have our old agencies wake up and see what the communities are asking for and what works and do it. No, I totally support art. Yes.
I just want to call dibs on the rainbow crosswalk for my house. That's it.
Thank you.
Mentioned one of the best, most important things is outreach to the community and things.
Yes.
That's why I wish that, thank Justin, because probably by tonight, this whole meeting will maybe be on his website or other websites. This is a very new thing for Blue Lake, and it's greatly appreciated, the transparency. I did want to make mention, your flyer there listed you coming here, but Blue Lake was right at the bottom, and I read down. I heard about this meeting 5 minutes before 12.
Oh, my.
And I'm totally involved in the community, so I'm not on some of these other, some of these Facebook things. But anyway, the outreach, and I don't see a single trucker in the room. We saw them go by. But when it comes to outreach, these kind of meetings should be specified way in advance. We're talking about trucking route. We would love to have Kernan Pepe, who drove by with the water truck and probably gave you a shower there on his way by at 35. But all those people are the people that are gonna have to have input. And the sooner the city can engage them in this process, I think the better chance we have of something being successful. I think that's imperative, that the truckers be reached out to, and even if it takes a special meeting just to address their concerns in the public meeting and way in advance when it works for them. So that's just a suggestion as far as input.
Oh, no, that's spot on. And I'll tell you a funny story. One of the roundabouts we needed to build in Hamburg, New York, and again, this is a major freight route, we couldn't figure out how to have a truck make a right-hand turn. The geometrics just didn't work in the tight intersection we have to design for. And so somebody had the bright idea going into the cafe where the truckers were, and offer a truck driver $20 if they could come out and do it. They had the cones laid out to, in a big parking lot. The truck driver, grabbed the $20 and came in, and he knew he couldn't turn right. He went around the whole circle, and that allowed him to make his right-hand turn. He had that figured out before any engineer could figure it out.
And Pepe went right through the middle of it, that's what Pepe did.
And Kent, just so you know, we did a local road safety plan,
Uh-huh.
where we're looking at a lot of these things, we engaged Green Diamond, so we have talked to some
Green
of the
Diamond?
local, yeah, we've talked to, I mean, a lot of it, cause the interaction between Blue Lake Boulevard and town.
Like Pepe and Kernan and, those have all been consulted, they knew about this meeting today.
No, this meeting came up like 2 weeks ago, we didn't even know.
That's all
So
I'm
this
saying,
came up,
you know, if a phone
Yeah.
call, even, as soon as you know about it, call them, so maybe they can get it on their schedule or send
Yeah.
someone, but it's gonna be great because they
yeah,
can
no,
watch.
literally, Ken, I set this up, it was 2 weeks ago, and then I was out of town, I just got back. So it was like, this is happening, Mandy's in the hospital, we were lucky we even pulled this off, so.
Good
I'll
job.
just say we barely even pulled this thing off.
I have a question on like the dome, like mini roundabouts that we're talking about, where trucks can like pass over the top of them. Is there any concern or like mitigation you can do with like the tire marks and that kind of thing when I'm thinking years down the road where these trucks have been hitting this thing, you know, as slow as they want, but, over and over again, is there anything to like, mitigate that, or is that just something that we just don't worry about except happens?
I think part of your design, you'd want to make sure your materials aren't gonna get scorched by tires or whatever. Generally though, when big equipment like that goes over, they go over at very low speed. Um,
So you like a dyed concrete or something like that, you're not
Yeah.
doing like a painted surface, you gotta do like a dye
Yeah.
or the actual material,
Yeah,
Material
can't
holds
just
the
be a
color.
coating.
Yeah, okay.
exactly.
Couple of things, Dan, first of all, thank you for being here.
Yes.
Good seeing you again after 20 whatever years. You mentioned the 10-foot traffic lanes,
Yes.
and you also mentioned the short driveways. And I
Yes.
just wanted to point out that in Blue Lake, our ordinance requires a 25-foot wide roads whenever you're proposing a new road. And the garage doors are set back 15 feet from the property line. So it's like enough for the tail of the car or the truck to block the sidewalks. And it would be nice for it to be either less than 10 feet or 10 feet.
So that people
or
don't
more
try.
than 20 feet, so that they
Or-
don't block the sidewalk when they're parked in front of the garages.
I totally agree, and I think the point is, if you've got a requirement for your street to be a certain dimension, you still use paint to get the right level of performance and correctness in the speed that people drive. Yeah.
And
Then
then-
again, that's your default. You always have reason to say go up to 11-foot lanes on a curve, or really high truck volumes or whatever. Yeah.
Another real interesting thing here that's actually, in my opinion, an amenity is that a lot of our streets, like First, H, I, J, couple of ones up the hill, maybe G, they are 60 feet wide right-of-ways. They're not improved, so they're really an open palette for really a good design of pedestrian, bicycle, trees, and all that kind of a thing. And then A, B, and C are 40-foot streets, so they can easily be one-way traffic with parking parked on one side of it with trees and bicycle lanes and whatnot. And these are actually ideas that came up in community charrette meetings in 95 to 97 and have been drawn up and have been part of the community discussions too. When those meetings actually were, they seeded the rail to trail idea. It was, the monies came from Ned Gain and Nancy Rycar back when they were trying to talk about converting the rail into trail.
Wow.
So some of that stuff, some of that work was done a long time ago. It was after Victor Dover's trip up here.
Oh, Victor came here
To Humboldt.
to Humboldt County.
Yeah, not Blue Lake, but to Humboldt.
Okay. Cool. Nice. Thank you. Other thoughts,
I have a
questions?
question. I did the Arcata, walk as well and the presentation at the Wharfing. But I was wondering, when you work with different municipalities, I know you kind of did a blanketed and worked,
Mhm.
kind of an overall with
Right.
the different towns here, but do you have any municipalities that have you, invite you back to work on a specific project
Yes,
ever, a lot, often?
quite often, and, what this is obviously is a buffet. And maybe you want a particular, set of foods, or ideas. Then we come back with a specific project in mind and help you through the public engagement for sure. And that's why I got into this field altogether. I saw project after project just dying because people couldn't agree. And then I went back into college, studied interpersonal communications, got my master's training, and then spent my entire career in transportation in public engagement. That's what it takes.
Okay, I have another question, another part two of that question. Do you ever work with, community groups and not?
Oh, yes.
Like, so a community really wants something and the city isn't paying attention or hearing them, and there's not, you can work with a community group.
Oh, absolutely.
To try to get the communication going.
Yeah, many examples where the city's not quite there yet.
Yeah, they're kind of stuck in the LOS and
Yeah.
like kind of the older
Yeah.
things.
And it's better if it could get co-funded. So for example, where I'm going to be in August, Buffalo, one of the original Olmsted design circles. Historic, precious, not touch it, but all the streets that surround it are inducing speed. So a group of citizens got together and paid for us to do a peer review. And following that, and the city wasn't on board. I mean, they knew that it wasn't a good design, but they didn't have any desire to fix it. But now, a state legislator has funded the total engineering of that, plus picked up 2 more circles. So we're doing all 3 of Olmsted's original circles off of a citizen project. It was only $2,500, right?
Yeah.
So it worked.
So I'm thinking of that slide where you added the different elements to make it more walkable, and the last one was a kind of mixed-use development. Can you talk a little bit more about how that urban form and the density contributes to the walkability and what the benefits are?
Exactly. So what people want, what people need to feel secure, that they're not out there alone, the only one doing it, they want the eyes on the street, whether it's in a commercial district or neighborhoods. Imagine walking through a neighborhood. I doubt that you haven't done anything this stupid, but you pick a neighborhood like Natomas, where every single house, all you see are the garages. People live there, but you have no idea whether there's anyone home. I remember we did a walk audit, blanking on the town, it was in Chicago, or the Chicago area. We took a whole busload of planners and engineers and city administrators to this neighborhood in a school bus. And we all got out and walked through the neighborhood, and by the time we got on the bus, we heard that there were 6 different calls came in. Somebody's stolen your bus, or this, or that. These were people in dresses and suits and everything. That was the craziest thing. Then we got in the bus and we went down to a true, authentic neighborhood where people had front porches, and we parked the bus. We got out. About every single household in sight, people came out to see what we were doing rather than complain what we were doing, right? And it's true, if you build a neighborhood where people are divorced from their neighbors, all they can do is be afraid. And so, we far prefer to work in a neighborhood like yours. Yes, sir.
It sounds like you're a great supporter then of neighborhood watch in some shape or form.
Yeah.
And that's something that a lot of us support here, because we do have minimal law enforcement. And I just want everybody to know, I strongly support you supporting that, because I think that's the neighbors watch after each other, and nothing better than having a neighborhood get together and having those.
Oh, absolutely. And for any of a variety of reasons. My wife is really into, emergency response in case we get a tsunami. And we're in the tsunami zone. So we've worked with, I think it's over 60 neighbors. And just bringing together people for a potluck and barbecue or whatever, it's really made the difference in people feeling we're all out to watch over one another. Okay.
Are these slides on your website?
They are for you, so I'm going to be giving them to the community as a PDF or whatever, so you guys can print them.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Justin can put her on his blog, right, Justin?
Cool. Well, yeah, if not anything else, go out, enjoy your wonderful community. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan, I forgot to thank you and HCOG too for helping setting all this up, so, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mandy is